Hello, I'm Rhea Basroon. I'm a reporter with the Sentinel newspapers, and we've been covering the Wheelabrator Frye proposed garbage plant for over a year. Tonight, with the cooperation of the library video staff, we would like to discuss the issues involved with the plant, including a slide presentation. East Brunswick residents are accustomed to setting out their trash at the curb twice a week, or else putting it in large bins near their garden apartments. Miraculously, the next morning it's gone, at little cost. And each day, 250 trucks travel down Edgeboro Road on the way to the Edgeboro Solid Waste Disposal landfill. This facility, which is 30 years old, accepts between 2,400 and 3,000 tons of garbage each day from East Brunswick, much of Middlesex County, and surrounding states. If we were to do nothing, this landfill will be filled in about 10 years. Plans are being made here and around the state to avoid a crisis situation. At the same time, a more environmentally aware society has learned that landfilling is not the best way to dispose of municipal waste. New Jersey has mandated that every county has an operating resource recovery plant by 1985. One way to meet that requirement is to copy countries around the world which for the past 25 years have been burning garbage, creating energy. Because with a high cost of oil, energy alternatives is as high a priority as finding a place to put our garbage. Wheelabrator Frye, a New Hampshire-based engineering firm, started operations in Saugus, Massachusetts with their first garbage-to-energy plant in the mid-1970s. Although they were closely watching and evaluating that venture, at the same time, company representatives were putting out feelers to where other resource recovery plants could be built. In 1974, Joseph Ferrrante met with former Mayor Gene Walling to discuss a plant in East Brunswick. The idea lay dormant for several years, until 1980, when the company began negotiating with Dan and Harold Herbert, the owners of the landfill. Wheelabrator Frye would like to purchase about 25 acres from the Herberts on which to build the incinerator next to the landfill. It was formally brought up before the Township Council in early 1981, when it was voted to apply for a $40,000 federal grant to study resource recovery. The plant, as proposed by Wheelabrator Frye, would burn approximately 1,200 tons of garbage each day, over 400,000 tons a year. The process would create steam to be sold to a local power plant to turn into electricity. The East Brunswick plant, which would be called RESCO, would have a smokestack between 200 and 340 feet high. The facility would burn half of the garbage dumped daily at Edgeboro, thereby doubling the life of the landfill. East Brunswick would then be the home of an incinerator and a landfill. The situation in Saugus was different. That town had a landfill which was often shut down by the Board of Health because it was a source of fires, rats, and odors. Saugus residents were glad to find an alternative to that dump, which was closed down entirely when RESCO began operating. The Saugus plant manufactures electricity, which supplies half of the energy needs of a General Electric plant nearby. Another byproduct of garbage incineration is ash. Experiments are being performed in this ash to test its performance as a material to build roads. In Saugus, the ash is also used to cover the land that was previously the dump. The first time I reported the RESCO situation, it was merely an item in the Sentinel Just Rambling column. Since then, it has become headlines, and Wheelabrator Frye and RESCO have become household words. It appears that the biggest concerns to residents are real estate values, the appearance of the plant, and the biggest issue by far, the environment. For instance, scrubbers, which are equipment to remove hydrochloric acid from emissions, are required in California and in technologically advanced countries such as West Germany and Japan. Yet, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has not yet decided whether or not scrubbers will be required in this state. Wheelabrator Frye maintains they are not necessary and emissions will remain within safe limits without them. One point often mentioned is that scrubbers would add up to 10% of the capital costs of construction and up to $5 a ton of garbage burned. I have with me today Mayor William Fox, Joseph Ferrrante, Vice President of Wheelabrator Frye, and Sheila Sideman, a member of IRATE, a citizens group formed to oppose RESCO. Ms. Sideman is a former chemistry teacher and is now the author of mathematic books. The state claims it has total jurisdiction over the location of garbage facilities, and it appears East Brunswick may not have too much input on the final decisions regarding RESCO. Mayor Fox, officially, what is East Brunswick doing to protect the best interests of the community?
Well, I think it's at least arguable as to whether or not the state has ultimate jurisdiction over the placement of a resource recovery facility. The law is vague enough that the placement of landfills, for example, was challenged, and it was those cases where the courts decided that local zoning did not apply to the siting of landfills. I think that resource recovery facilities are quite another thing, and we're prepared to argue that particular issue. But beyond that, I think that it's important to recognize that we are in the beginnings of this whole process, that we have retained one of the better environmental attorneys in the state. We have retained, at least for this phase, some excellent consultants, and we will be watchdogging every step of the process to be sure that the law is followed, that all of the procedures and regulations are followed, and that in the event we do not prevail in the end, that if a plant must be built, it will be the most environmentally sound facility that we can get with the very latest technology.
Haven't there been some ordinances written in the past few months that would control the plant?
Well, we have really two sets of ordinances. One of the zoning ordinances, and in fact, we had had a rather vague heavy industrial zone for many years, which badly needed updating. And what we have done recently is update that. And among the provisions of the ordinance are that uses are specifically listed, permitted uses are specifically listed, and if they're not listed, they're not permitted. It happens that a mass burning resource recovery facility is not, as well as a landfill, is not a permitted use under this new ordinance. Beyond that, we have under consideration, awaiting state approval, a local air pollution code, which is more stringent than the state's regulations, but it requires state approval before it can become effective.
What is the specific role of the attorney?
Well, the attorney specifically is to advise us on the procedural and legal aspects of the application review process. This is a very complicated process. The statutes and regulations involve the county, they involve the state, and to some degree they involve the municipality, in that the county and the state must take into account the characteristics, zoning, and desires of the municipality. It doesn't say they have to bow to them, but they must take it into account. It involves federal regulations and at least 20 different permits that must be obtained by RESCO before they are allowed to operate. So that we clearly need somebody who has knowledge and experience in this area to guide us through this maze of regulations and laws that govern this type of facility.
Now, I'd like Joe Ferrrante to tell us something about the plant, what their plans are, and to show us pictures.
Thanks, Rhea. As the mayor has mentioned, we're in the early stages of the permit application process. We have quite a ways to go, yet the origins of this project go back a number of years. I brought with me about 10 slides to help you understand something about the origins of this technology, our own experience in making it work, and give you an idea of something about the Edgeboro, the proposed Edgeboro project that we have planned for East Brunswick. Wheelabrator Frye's involvement in creating energy from refuse began with this plant, which began its operations in September of 1975. It is a technology, mass combustion technology, that has been in use throughout the world for about a generation. This plant, located north of Boston in Saugus, Massachusetts, was the 94th plant built worldwide. Since 1975, 74 more plants have been built. Wheelabrator is now building plants in Westchester and in Baltimore. The plant serves two functions. First, to dispose of refuse, and since 1975 the plant has disposed of 2 million tons of refuse from 18 towns in the Boston North Shore area. On an annual basis, this amounts to about 400,000 tons, or about the same scale as proposed for the Edgeboro area of East Brunswick. In addition to disposing of refuse, the plant generates useful energy. This slide shows the plant and the steam line which connects it 3,000 feet to the energy customer, the General Electric Lynn River Works, which is a jet engine and turbine manufacturing complex in Lynn, Massachusetts. The General Electric plant employs 13,000 people and derives more than 50% of its power from the refuse burned at the RESCO project. The RESCO project is significant in that it is the first commercial project built in the United States to create energy from refuse. It was built without taxpayer dollars. It was built with private financing. The only cost to the public is the tipping fee per ton, which is charged at the gate. The fees to the public are fixed by long-term contracts and escalate annually. The project, therefore, is identical in almost every respect to a traditional power plant, except that, as you can see in this photograph, instead of using coal, oil, or gas, it uses refuse. This is a photo of the pit area of the Boston North Shore project with a capacity of holding 6,000 tons of refuse, or the equivalent of better than 6,000 barrels of oil. We now look at a rendering of the proposed Edgeboro project. It is located approximately 1,000 feet from the banks of the Raritan River and is adjacent to the existing Edgeboro landfill. As you've heard, it's about the same scale as the Boston North Shore project, about one-third smaller than similar projects which we are about to build in Westchester County and Baltimore. It is the same technology, however, that is currently in use in 168 places around the world. It will have enough energy to power 30,000 homes. This is a photograph of the plant as viewed from the adjacent residential area about 3,000 feet to the west. In the distance, on the horizon, is the ILR landfill in Edison across the Raritan River. It is that landfill that is one of the reasons why Middlesex County and the state of New Jersey have to turn to more modern methods of waste disposal. That landfill will have no more capacity within a year and a half. This is a photograph of the proposed project, which we superimposed on an actual photograph of the Edgeboro site. The vantage point being the Turnpike Bridge, just slightly north of the bridge itself. In the horizon, about 2 miles to the east of the plant, to give you some perspective, is the town of Sayreville. Just to the right, on the right portion of the picture, is the Edgeboro landfill itself. This is a model of the plant that we are proposing to build, or actually will be building, in Westchester County. It varies quite dramatically from the earlier rendering that was shown of the Edgeboro RESCO project. We have asked our engineers to update and to integrate much of the facility and to arrive at a style which will be used in all future refuse-to-energy installations. Important to note is the fact that all of the operating elements of the plant are enclosed in a single main building. The exterior, both in terms of composition and design and color, is made into a harmonious single structure.
Joe, you've often said that it is ideal to build a resource recovery plant on an existing landfill. But the plant in Saugus and the two that you're planning in Peekskill and in Baltimore, they're not on landfills. Can you comment on that?
Sometimes you don't have any choice. Our preference is still to site these plants on a landfill for two basic reasons. One is the fact that not only does the plant have to meet the environmental safeguards that are built into the regulatory structure, but also the trucks that deliver the fuel to the plant have to travel through neighborhoods or through areas that may never have seen trucks before. When you deal with an existing landfill, as is the case in Edgeboro, truck logistics are a matter of history. Trucks have been traveling those highways from throughout the state for 20 years. So it does alleviate an issue that otherwise has to be addressed when you site a facility where refuse trucks have never been before. It's an ideal approach. You're not always afforded that luxury. The second reason for siting them by a landfill is the operating reason. There is no way that any resource recovery plant can eliminate the need for landfilling. The proximity of the landfill affords the customer, the public, the facility and the efficiency of being able to get rid of his waste every day, whether or not the plant is functioning at full capacity. We have to take the plant offline to repair, to maintain it. In those situations, the trucks will have a readily available alternative in a functioning, approved landfill.
And what will determine the final height of the stack?
The final height of the stack is a determination made by both state and federal agencies, environmental agencies. It is a product of some extensive air modeling procedures, which are both agencies approve the procedure. Based upon dispersion models, the ideal stack level will be certified by the state and federal government.
Thank you. And you've often said that scrubbers would be nice, but economically, they're not cost effective. If money was no object, what would you include in this plant that is not included now?
That's a nice question. If money was no object, you could make these plants look like office buildings. They would be virtually indistinguishable from any other modern commercial facility. We proposed some plants, again, with money being no object in other locations, and didn't really break a budget, but we went perhaps $6 or $8 million more than had originally been proposed. The plant was totally enclosed in glass. It had a remote stack with an observation tower incorporated into the stack. It was a beautiful facility. Obviously, there are some constraints, however, on what you can do. The scrubber issue is an economic issue, and it's one that the public really has to decide. If money were no object, a scrubber would be desirable. And it may very well be that a scrubber is placed on the plant. However, when you read daily in the papers the fact that towns all over the state are objecting to landfills incorporating environmental improvements so that they can prevent leachate from going into the aquifer, we believe that the public is sensitive to these costs of environmental improvements. It's a question of having a fully informed public, a public that understands what the cost is and what the benefit is. And that, I think, will come out as the regulatory process, as the permit process unfolds. There'll be a clear record of what the cost of putting all of these improvements on the plant will be.
I saw a presentation last week that showed a resource recovery plant with a swimming pool and another with a ski slope.
Right.
Nearby.
It's all possible.
Can you tell us how long would it take to build? What would the impact be of construction? And when it was completed, how many employees would you have?
It'll take about 2.5 years to build. The impact during construction will be, in terms of jobs, will probably bring to the local area at peak employment, about 500 jobs on the site of all different, the range of construction trades. In terms of final employment, we'll employ full-time about 60 employees.
Thank you. Now, Sheila, would you tell us something about IRATE and what your role is?
IRATE is a group of citizens in East Brunswick that are opposed to the incinerator that is being planned near the Edgeboro landfill. We use the word incinerator because basically that's what it is. Wheelabrator Frye plans to burn garbage and, as a byproduct, create steam and electricity. We are very concerned about what is going to happen when this garbage is burned. First of all, there is no temperature control mechanism on this plant. In order to get reasonably complete combustion of most garbage, you have to hit a temperature of 1800 degrees. There is no way to make sure that this will indeed happen, and visitors to the plant in Saugus have found lots and lots of unburned paper, much less other materials. When garbage is burned, you've heard of the word acid rain. Well, when garbage is burned, acid gases come out of the smokestack, the gases that we would like to see trapped in a scrubber. These acid gases have contributed all over the state and the country to the death of lakes and fishes and to other very serious problems. One of the problems with the plant is that there is no real way to monitor the garbage going in. I don't think, no matter how scrupulous the workers in the plant are, they're going to open up every black plastic bag that comes into that plant. And you know as well as I know, New Jersey has a terrible history of very hazardous chemicals being hidden and discarded indiscriminately. We don't want to see these chemicals in our backyard and in our air. Furthermore, we are very disturbed about the entire inspection and monitoring process as set up by the state. Last November, IRATE met with representatives from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and asked them to explain to us how a plant like this is given a permit to operate and what happens once it is online. We were shocked at the answer. Once Mr. Ferrrante and his company have decided the plant is ready to operate, they notify the DEP and they are given 90 days to get the plant online. Somewhere within the 90 days, Wheelabrator Frye invites the state in and sets up state-supervised tests. If and when these tests meet the state levels, Wheelabrator Frye is given a 5-year operating permit. From that day on, you can expect no monitoring by the state. We were told, and you know, that the state does not have enough staff to monitor the facilities that they already have. You only have to drive up the New Jersey Turnpike to see the results of this. In this plant, the only time they will do monitoring is if there is a citizen complaint. Now, most citizens will usually complain only if there is black ash or dirt. The dangerous stuff, those gases, the gases that can eat your car, your lungs, and Lord knows what else, those we can't taste, we can't smell, we can't see, we can't hear. We have to rely on the Wheelabrator Frye Company and their goodness, and I must admit that given the history of American industry, I'm a little nervous about this. On top of this, the landfill will not only continue in operation, but in Wheelabrator Frye's own proposal to the state for the licensing of this plant, we see that the landfill will increase and another landfill is planned across the Raritan River somewhere in the Edison area. Finally, from the environmental standpoint, Route 18 has already been declared an environmental disaster with terms of carbon monoxide levels by the EPA. The increased truck traffic that this plant will bring will only add to the environmental disaster. Economically, we're even more nervous. I've spent the last 2 days on the telephone with Mr. Davies, who is the solid waste administrator for Westchester County. According to Mr. Davies, the true cost to the citizens of Westchester County for Wheelabrator's new plant, as of today's estimates, are $43 a ton. Not the $17 a ton tipping fee that Mr. Ferrrante tells us about, but when you take into account all the other costs, it's $43 a ton. A rough calculation I did at home today led me to the figure that if our tipping fees or our garbage costs were increased to that, given the number of households in East Brunswick, the increased cost could more than pay for the salaries of at least one school in East Brunswick. And I think we have to consider where our money is going. Finally, the plant is ugly. I cannot think of any other way to say it. I brought along one of the blueprints that Mr. Ferrrante has had given us earlier on. And Rhea, if you could just help me unroll this. I think I have to stand up. This little piece here, by the way, is the extension we had to add when Mr. Ferrrante himself told us that probably the smokestack will have to get taller to meet EPA standards. Down in the corner next to Rhea's hand, you can see, for perspective, a single-family house. Rhea, if you could point to that red house. Yes. And a car. Ladies and gentlemen, when your friends come down the New Jersey Turnpike and get off at exit 9 to visit you, this is their introduction to East Brunswick. I myself really would like this to be our landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Let me just... how many members does Irate have now?
Okay. Irate has a varying membership, as most protest groups do. We seem to run between 50 and 100, and it depends on the activity, quite frankly. Obviously, more will come out for an interesting meeting like the town meeting we ran last spring than some of the harder work, but we're running between 50 and 100.
Thank you. Joe, do you have any answers to some of the points you put up?
Well, many of them are excellent points. The photograph of the plant I can't help but comment on. That is an early approach that we took to designing the plant. I think we've improved it dramatically. The Westchester economics are interesting because it, I think, points out the importance of what we've tried to do in East Brunswick by siting the facility on a landfill or adjacent to a landfill. One of our key concerns is that very point of economics, the economics of tipping fees in New Jersey. New Jersey, unfortunately, in many respects, has been the dumping ground for the region's solid waste for one reason. Its tipping fees have been low. They've been kept depressed. It makes a very disciplined marketplace to introduce new, improved technology such as the Edgeboro-Resco plant. New York, on the other hand, has had high tipping fees, so that the difference between a $40 tipping fee in the case of Westchester and what they had been paying, which is in excess of $20 a ton, is not insurmountable. The importance of the Edgeboro facility lies in the fact that by running the landfill concurrently with the facility, we are able to provide the public with this service at a cost that is competitive with the cost of landfilling that is being proposed now in 1982. Tariffs that have been on file, placed on file with the BPU, indicate that the tipping fees that will be imposed in Middlesex County are more than $20 a ton. By averaging our rate with the existing Edgeboro landfill, we will be able to establish a fee structure in that range.
Okay, Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have just about scratched the surface of this issue. We could go on forever. We hope we've added to your knowledge of Resco tonight, and we would really be interested in hearing your comments and questions. I'd like to thank the library video staff, Mayor Fox, Sheila Sideman, and Joe Ferrrante for being with me tonight. And if you have any comments or questions, please call the video department at 254-1220.